This is Rick Malone for the San Francisco Symphony. The sound of Gustav Mahler is unmistakable. Huge universes that can barely be contained by the modern orchestra, alternating with delicate, almost chamber-like passages inspired by the music of Vienna and the Bohemian countryside where he grew up. But where did this sound come from? Did it develop over years of trial and error? Or did it appear fully formed, like Athena springing from the head of Zeus? The answer lies somewhere in the middle. But many of the clues can be found in his first major composition, the epic cantata Das klagende Lied. Mahler began writing Das klagende Lied when he was just a teenager. It took him about 2 years to finish, but it was another 20 years before he was able to get it performed. Even then, he had to cut the first 2/3 of the work for that premiere in 1901. The full work wasn't performed until 23 years after his death. In a way, that performance brought Mahler's catalog of works full circle, since every one of them, including Das klagende Lied, is linked to at least one other, either anticipating it, referring to it, or quoting it directly. Das klagende Lied means the song of lamentation, but the lament or complaint also has another meaning in German, which is to file a legal complaint or to bring a suit. The story is based on an old folktale, actually a combination of folktales, including The Singing Bone from the Brothers Grimm, rewritten and turned into verse by Mahler himself. A beautiful but haughty princess decides that none of the local knights are good enough to marry her, so she sets a task. There's a beautiful but rare red flower in the woods. Whoever finds it and brings it to her may marry her. Two brothers set off to find the flower. One is kind and devout, the other is cruel and could only curse, in Mahler's lines. The kind brother finds the flower, sticks it in his cap, and falls asleep. The cruel brother sneaks up on him, kills him, and steals the flower. That's part one of the cantata, Forest Legend. In part two, The Minstrel, a wandering musician finds a bone in the forest and carves it into a flute. The bone is from the body of the younger brother, and when the musician plays it, it sings the sad tale of the murder. So the musician decides to take it to the queen. In part 3, Wedding Piece, the minstrel arrives in the middle of a feast, celebrating the wedding of the queen and the murderer. plays his flute and it sings its sad story again. The new king grabs the flute and plays it himself, and this time it accuses him directly. Ah, brother, dear brother mine, it was you who struck me dead, and now you play upon my whitened bone." End quote. The queen falls in a faint, the guests flee in terror, and the walls of the castle collapse. Das klagende Lied is an amazingly self-assured work for a teenager, especially one who had never heard a note of his attempts at orchestration. There are plenty of echoes of Wagner here, as well as glimpses of the more mature Mahler and the Gurrelieder by his soon-to-be friend Arnold Schoenberg. There's also a remarkable sense of atmosphere in his setting of the scenes in the forest, or the castle. And the abrupt mood shifts between elation and disaster in the finale. Mahler always resented the fact that when he submitted Das klagende Lied for the Vienna Conservatory's Beethoven Prize in 1881, it was passed over for a work by his teacher, Robert Fuchs. Years later, when audiences were still having difficulty understanding and appreciating his music, Mahler made his famous statement, "My time will come." Das klagende Lied makes it pretty clear that, even at the age of 20, his genius and his vision had already arrived. This is Rick Malone for the San Francisco Symphony.